Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ashley Appling. I am the Extension Agent in the Culpeper County office, serving Culpeper, Madison, and Orange counties also. And today we'll be talking about Boxwood Blight, which is a disease that if you do get it in your landscape on your boxwoods can be a very devastating disease. As you can see from the picture on our opening slide in the upper right-hand corner. If you see this, you probably have a pretty bad circumstance going on. And we're going to talk about the symptoms today. When it came to Virginia, we don't have a very new map on the spread yet, but we will show that and talk about that. The symptoms and signs, like I was saying a little bit ago, and some control measures and what to look out for, what to not to look out for, things like that. So let's get started. So starting off a little bit at the beginning, of course, ideal boxwood conditions. So boxwoods ideally would like well-draining soil. They do not do very well in compacted soil, even though they're pretty tough shrubs in particular. You see them, I know when I travel around the area, around the local area and further, and I'm sure you've seen them too if you're familiar with boxwoods, that they can actually take some poor conditions. They'll be around some old home sites. They're not used in new plantings very often in parking lot situations, but they can be used that way. They're pretty tough overall. But one thing that they do not like at all is waterlogged roots, which we had about last summer was pretty dry. Last spring was pretty wet, so you could have seen some issues on your boxwood. 2 years ago was that summer that seemed like it almost rained all the time. And that summer, definitely we saw some root diseases with boxwoods. There are a number of diseases that boxwoods can get that are associated with their roots, but boxwood blight is not one of them. Boxwood blight only affects the foliage and the stems. It does not affect the roots. So boxwoods that do die from this disease can bounce back. So you'll see regrowth, which is interesting. That's an interesting fact that I just like. It's kind of sad actually. Boxwood will just keep on going. But we'll talk a little bit more about that. Nematode problems. Boxwood is just not growing very well. Boxwood just is sitting there, not doing much. Could have a nematode problem. Nematodes are microscopic roundworms, actually, that actually invade the root system and just stress the plant out to an extent where it just doesn't grow very fast. Most of our soils around our area do have nematodes, and there's no real control measures, no chemical control measures in place for nematode control. Basically, you just have to de-stress the boxwood as much as you can, watering in dry conditions, not putting it in a spot where it's going to get too much water. Nematodes can, most boxwoods can grow through those issues. They do prefer some shade. If you can provide it, shade in the afternoon would be ideal. So that would be shade after 4 o'clock would be a great thing. 4 o'clock for the rest of the afternoon. Most of the day can be sun. Afternoon shade would be best. But I know I've gone to gardens, I've gone to historic sites where they receive sun the entire day, and boxwoods still do pretty well. Bronzing in wintertime, that is something that can be seen, especially if the boxwoods are growing in full winter sun with no protection from surrounding evergreens. And that's something, you just see that bronzing in the winter and they grow out of it. So this is just all around boxwood conditions. Boxwoods will do fine. They're pretty tough plants in general, which is why this disease is so much sadder, I guess you could say, than some of the other diseases around for plants. Very tough plant, deer don't like it, so that's one good reason to plant them. And this disease, we'll go into the details, can pretty devastate a planting. Rappahannock County, especially a couple of years ago. If you've ever been to Washington, Virginia, little Washington, they call it. The whole downtown area was pretty devastated with Boxwood Blight. They had a lot of historic hedgerows of them through the little town area, and it looked like it went from bush to bush to bush. Pretty wiped them out pretty well. So let's get into some details. If you do get it, it can be a bad situation. So here's some boxwoods starting to show the symptoms. You can see the plant on the left-hand side looks pretty good. Branch here and there. We'll talk about a look-alike disease coming up. But that's pretty good. That's pretty normal looking boxwood. This is when we start getting the one on the right-hand side is when we start getting the calls in and the questions. It could be, there's a look-alike disease called Boxwood Blight, which we'll talk about a little bit later, which can cause the same look. But once you know the symptoms and signs of Boxwood Blight, it becomes kind of obvious. And this is what you look at. This is when you start investigating. And this is one that's really far along, as you can see in this picture here. That is a sad bush right there. So we'll take a closer look in a few more slides. So some of the signs and symptoms right here. The upper left-hand picture, let's go start at the upper left and go around. You'll see this tannish, tan colored on leaves, kind of a black dead horizon between the tan and the living growth. There are some other issues that can cause this. Weather conditions, cold damage can cause that. But this is when you want to start questioning pretty hard that this is what you might have. You can see in nursery situations, it can wipe out the plants pretty quick. One important thing to, yeah, just look at that. That's pretty devastating. And if you have an advanced case, you'll see the double stripes as you see on this upper right-hand picture. These parallel dark lines on the stems, that is when you pretty much know you have Boxwood Blight on your hands. This wider angle at the bottom there. And yeah, it's not a very happy situation if you see all this coming together. So this map is from 2010. It has spread pretty good, but Virginia, the entire state of Virginia pretty much has Boxwood Blight at this point. There are pockets here and there where it's not visible or not found yet. But our little local area, our Culpeper, Madison, Orange, all three counties definitely have Boxwood Blight. Historic Garden Week last year, unfortunately it didn't happen this year, but last year there was a lot of safety measures put in place to try to combat tourists and visitors going from garden to garden. We'll talk about what you can do to sanitize, etc., like that, to try to control this disease. But you can see pretty much the East Coast and out on the West Coast, there's a couple spots in Oregon. New York's been found. New York's doing a lot of testing, as you can see, a lot of green. So this was 2010. We have an updated map coming up, but it's a good visualization of where it started. It started mostly in the New England area and came down our way. 2011 was the first sighting in Virginia, actually started down in Southwest Virginia. So a little bit over the North Carolina, Carroll County, Patrick, Floyd counties area. That is actually a prime, I found it very interesting. Some of y'all might already know this, but that is actually the prime holiday season production of boxwood for wreaths, holiday greenery, all the other kind of stuff like that is harvested in Southwest Virginia. And is actually sent up the entire East Coast, which is, I just found is amazing. And that's why it was so hard hit. There's a lot of interaction, a lot of exchange in those boxwood areas. And unfortunately, that is the first site that we found in Virginia, was in Southwest. So that was in 2011. It has spread pretty good across the state since then. And like I was saying earlier, we have it in our area. A couple years ago, it was found in Richmond and in Virginia Beach area. The big population areas of Virginia pretty much have this disease. So be on the lookout for what we see here today. So this map is more updated than the first one we saw. 2017, this is the most updated one we've gotten from Virginia Tech in a couple years. You can see Culpeper County found 2014. Orange and Madison are not on here, but they were definitely, I found sites, I investigated sites in Madison and Orange in 2017, so they should definitely be on here. So most Northern Virginia you can see is on this map. Richmond area, like I was saying before, Virginia Beach, a little scattering into Central Virginia. Roanoke definitely has sites. So most of the big population centers, like I was saying. And yeah, if you have historic boxwoods, it's a big concern as of this date, as of 2020. So this is what we saw a little bit earlier. Similar things. I apologize for those slides earlier. I'm not sure. I think they're kind of out of order. But this is good to reinforce what we're seeing here. So the darkened tan circles on the leaves, good first indication on the leaves. A little bit more advanced of a case, like I was saying earlier, we'll have the two parallel dark lines, and that is very symptomatic. You will definitely see that if your boxwoods have an advanced case of this disease. And then the severe defoliation, as you can see in this nursery setting in the bottom right-hand picture. That is one of the takeaways between Volucella blight and Boxwood blight. Boxwood blight, the leaves do defoliate pretty readily and pretty quickly. And the tan colored leaves for the Volucella, which we'll have some pictures of in a little bit, stay on the branches. Volucella blight is actually a disease more commonly interacted with winter damage of boxwood. So boxwoods are damaged in the winter, they're weakened. This disease invades because it's taking advantage of that weakness from the winter damage. And you only see branches here and there affected. You won't see the entire bush. And we'll see that picture in a little bit. But one of the big indications is you have severe defoliation. You better start investigating. You probably have boxwood blight on your hands. So on a microscopic scale, or not even microscopic, on the top left-hand picture, the sporulation on the leaves will actually be white. So you'll see some white spores. This is in humid conditions. So this would be early morning. More than likely it'd be the best time unless it's raining. If it's a lot of moisture from rain, you might see it during the day. Early morning would be the best time to investigate this on diseased leaves. You could also do your own kind of test by putting it in a sandwich bag or some similar kind of container with some moisture, and they will sporulate and make this white spores as we see in this picture. That is also a good indication of whether you have Boxwood blight or Volucella blight. We'll see a picture of Volucella blight. The spores are actually salmon colored. So that is one way to distinguish that also. And Boxwood blight always has these white spores. So this is going to help spread the disease. I haven't quite said this yet, but Boxwood blight is not an airborne disease. It has to be spread on some kind of material. So like on an animal brushing up against it, on clothing, on tools, gardening tools, any kind of interaction. So that's how it spreads. It doesn't spread through the air, which is an important thing to remember. And speaking about it, and it comes up. So Volucella blight. This is the minor pathogen that follows stress, like I was saying, mostly the wintertime stress in the plant. And this is what I was talking about in the upper right-hand picture of the leaves. The leaves stay on the branches unless there's a big windstorm or rainstorm that comes through. While you blight, the leaves they're just they don't want to fall off, so they'll stay in place, and they'll have this tannish brown color in the branches, just like we're seeing here. And if you put it in that same sandwich bag or a different one, not that you wouldn't want the same thing in the same, I guess you could do it, but not necessarily want to do it that way. But you'll see this, it starts out white, but it will go to salmon orange color. So that is a good indication that you have Volatility blight. And whether or not you do this or send it off to the Virginia Tech Plant Clinic to be investigated, either way, if you get Volatility blight back as the diagnosis, that is good news. All you have to do is cut off the dead branch and you are fine. There's no other measures you have to put into place. So I usually tell clients, if you get Volatility blight back as the answer, that is good news. You might have a disease on your hands still, but that one is easy to control. So boxwood blight is the big one where we don't want in the landscape. So Volatility blight, not too bad. So some of the measures we're going to talk about going forward on this presentation. One of the number one things you can do is just avoid introducing a disease on infected plants. So basically, one of the good rules of thumb is if you have really old boxwoods on your site, you have boxwoods you want to protect, just don't buy any new boxwoods. That is one of the big things to do. Don't go to the big box stores, don't go to Lowe's, don't go to Home Depot, don't go to any kind of place like that. There are certified boxwood growers in the state that you can go to, but there's just been so many issues with those kind of retailers like Lowe's and Home Depot and Walmart and stuff like that, that it's just not safe to buy the boxwoods from there. Because it's so widespread in Virginia, just don't do it. So you don't want to bring it in on infected plants. That's one of the first things to keep in mind. So the Boxwood Blight Cleanliness Program, and this is mostly nurseries that are registered. And this is on the Virginia Cooperative Extension website. So just type that in there, Virginia Cooperative Extension, Boxwood Blight Cleanliness Program, and it will bring up the list pretty well. So we've talked about the symptoms a little bit of boxwood blights, become familiar with that. I will give you all a copy of this presentation, and the copy of the recording will also be sent to y'all. So y'all will have that for your own information. And if you do go into a nursery situation and they're supposed to be trusted, as long as you know what the symptoms and signs are to look for, educate yourself, look at them even closer, just to make sure that it's really not infected. And you can even ask the grower, ask them about their practices. Most growers want you to buy their materials, so they are trying to keep it as clean as possible. There are a couple resistant varieties, but not very much. Most of them are Korean type boxwoods, which really don't give you the same look as the American and English boxwoods. And people don't really like them. They look more like a Japanese holly, which has a different color, different leaf shape, so it just doesn't look right usually. There are some Saunders Brothers Nurseries has released a new boxwood. I think it was supposed to have been this year. That's supposed to be resistant, that looks more like the American English, so you'd be safe planting those. Oh, I should backtrack. You're safe. Resistance does not mean that it can't be a carrier of the disease. So that is an important thing to remember too. So the Saunders Brothers resistant boxwoods I was just mentioning, the Korean boxwoods, they might not show or be infected by the disease, but they could be carriers. So if you have historic boxwood, this is best not to plant any new ones. But if you have a new landscape, perfectly fine to plant those varieties. So there are some out there, here and there, out there and about. Incredible sales, just don't buy from the discount rack. That's always one of the things we always mention. If the plant is in the discount area of the store, It's weakened, it's not doing well. It's best to stay away from a discounted plant if you can. Yep, you get what you pay for. That is absolutely true with most things in life, isn't it? You get what you pay for usually. So avoiding introducing debris, contaminated soil. We'll show some pictures of leaf blowers in a little bit. Let me bring up all this on the screen first. Whoops. Okay, so leaf blowers can be a real bad issue. Well, I'll save that little bit of talking for the picture that we're going to see about that. Working from low risk to high risk areas basically means you don't suspect any diseases in the area. You're going to do some pruning. You're going to do some outdoor work. Do that in the areas first where you don't think there's any disease pressure. And then if you do suspect or you have some really highly valuable boxwoods, go ahead and make sure everything is as clean as possible. Everything you're taking all the measures in place before you work in those areas. So we'll talk about the way to sanitize coming up in a little bit, but you want to make sure you want to sanitize tools, hoses, anything on your own site, or even if you're going to a gardening friend's site, or maybe you do landscaping work. Make sure everything's clean in between jobs. So dipping tools in a 5-gallon bucket. We'll talk about what strength you have to use for sanitizers in a little bit. Having trash bags on hand, disposable clothing, buckets, spray bottles. Make sure everything is as clean as possible. If you don't take anything else away from this presentation, sanitation, just like it is with our current situation, our current health crisis, it's also really important with these boxwoods, just making sure everything is clean. So leaf debris and soil away from tires. So that's going to be hard to do with visitors coming onto your site. But just, yeah, the big takeaway is just everything is clean. Fungal on clothing can be a major issue. I don't think I have this picture in this presentation, but up in Fairfax County, the extension agent up there sent us pictures and a story about a lady. She was pruning her boxwoods, did not know boxwood blight was in her yard. It actually got onto the spores got onto her shirt that we were showing earlier, those white spores. Very hard to see if you don't have a microscope. But she was pruning along her hedgerow. A little bit later, takes some time for the disease to infect. She could actually see a whole dead line where her stomach had rubbed against the boxwood hedge while she was pruning. So it can definitely be spread on clothing. So that's when I was talking about Historic Garden Week, about the precautions, sanitation precautions that were put in place. People can definitely bring this in on clothes, on shoes. Pets, dogs running through the area could spread it, cats could spread it. So yeah, as best you can, I know it's hard to do, but the best you can, try to make sure everything is as clean as possible. So holiday greenery, that was the sad story about a couple years ago. That's how VDAC's, Virginia Department of Agriculture, thinks it was spread into the Richmond and Virginia Beach areas. Some local retail stores were selling wreaths with boxwoods in the wreaths, and no one knew. And it was spread into, they believe that's how it was spread into the Virginia Beach and Richmond areas of the state. So you see these boxwoods along the front of the house. You put that one boxwood wreath on the front door, it can infect all your boxwoods around it. So if you've ever suspected anything and you want to buy a wreath every year, just don't buy one with boxwood in it. Even branches like that can still spread the disease, because this is a leaf disease, this is a branch disease. So it's important to remember, even holiday greenery can spread boxwood blight. If you absolutely have to buy it, just inspect it as close as you can. Look for those black streaks on the branches, look for the leaf spots, anything like that. Don't buy that greenery, don't buy that wreath in question. And make sure to also bag and discard the greenery, the wreath, etc. after the holidays. So don't throw it in the compost pile, uh, even if you didn't have any issues with it. Just don't leave that kind of problem on your landscape. I know a lot of folks are being as green as possible, but in this one circumstance, to save your boxwoods, just don't don't put it in the compost pile. Bag it, take it to the landfill. That's really important to stop the spread of this disease. Yep, composting, just like I mentioned. Don't do that with your holiday greenery. Deer, I know that picture's on here. That'll probably be pretty much impossible unless you can fence them out of the area. So some kind of deer fencing would be big. Pets are really hard to keep out of the area. You can see this dog is basically laying in the bush. So, but try to keep them out of the area as much as you can, especially if you have a lot of boxwoods that are dear to your heart. Just keep them out of that area. It's hard to do. It's hard to do for vegetable growers. I've seen their pain in this. But try your best to keep animals out of the area because they can definitely spread it just like people can. They can definitely spread this disease. Oops, a little bit of a sneak peek. Resistant cultivars, New Gen from Saunders Brothers is a boxwood cultivar you can buy. High levels of resistance to boxwood blight and boxwood leaf miners, which is good. That's another insect issue that comes into play. But just like I was mentioning earlier, it is resistant, but that does not mean that can't be a carrier of the disease. So this is great for new plantings. You're not going to lose it. Just make sure it's not interspersed with your current boxwoods. Resistance does not mean immunity. Just like it says on this slide, it could still introduce the disease into your landscape. So these look like American English boxwoods. Everything looks fine, but it could still be a carrier. It just won't get the disease. It won't show the symptoms of the disease. Same with some of the Korean boxwoods, which we were mentioning earlier. This boxwood grows fine. It's resistant to the disease, but doesn't mean it can't bring it into your landscape still. So just keep that in mind, all the advertising and all the stuff like this. So the leaf blower, I kind of foreshadowed that a little bit earlier. Leaf blowers can be very dangerous with boxwoods. I visited a garden in Madison about 2 years ago now. They had some infected boxwoods of Boxwood Blight, and you could see the leaf debris. And you could actually, it was pretty sad to see, you could follow the trail of the leaf blower where it had blown the leaf debris into the landscape. And there was like a little perfect cone of Boxwood Blight disease through the boxwoods. It can definitely spread pretty quick. So we're seeing in our left-hand side picture, this boxwood is totally defoliated from Boxwood Blight. This one's starting to show it. You can see this one in the pot had it. Leaf blower blows it onto your surrounding boxwoods, and this disease can be spread through leaf debris too. So that is an important thing to remember. And you see all this leaf debris, it is hard to get rid of. So it can definitely spread quickly, as you can imagine, in a situation where leaf blowers are put in place. So just be careful. If you have boxwoods, maybe don't use the leaf blowers if you have a concern in your landscape. So just a couple other pictures of Boxwood Blight. We have this nice landscaping here, but these little bushes of boxwoods totally devastated from the disease here. So this is just other things to look out for. This is other, if you have symptoms, you see a boxwood that looks like this, I would look real close at the branches at this point. It probably has the wax streaks. If you're seeing a boxwood that looks like these four right here. There are a couple other carriers of the disease that don't show the symptoms. The pachysandras, if you know them by that name. Some people know them as spurge. Pachysandra can be a carrier of Boxwood Blight. It is planted in the same location very much. It grows well in shade. It grows well around boxwoods. But it can be a carrier, so don't plant new pachysandra in your landscape. It could spread the disease to your boxwoods. Sweet box is another little hedging plant that's pretty commonly planted around boxwoods. And just watch out for that. You don't want to bring that into your landscape either. They can be carriers, which means they do not show symptoms of the disease. So it's important to remember, yeah, if you have boxwoods you want to take care of, you want to protect, you're going to have to forego planting pachysandra in your landscape. Any new pachysandra. Current pachysandra is fine, but don't introduce any new plants. This is the ratings from the University of North Carolina State, showing the susceptibility of different boxwood cultivars to Boxwood Blight. So at the very top here, this is the positive control, which is English boxwood. So it is the most susceptible of all boxwoods to Boxwood Blight. You see a little bit further down is the American boxwood. So our most common types are English boxwood and American boxwood. American is actually a cultivar of boxwood. And they are both very highly susceptible to the disease. You can see a little bit further down, we have some crosses between the Korean type. So some of the Korean ones are susceptible. Some of the other, we go further down the list. Green Mountain is a very popular cultivar of boxwood. I've also seen John Baldwin around a lot. Green Gem is often sold a lot. You can see these are more tolerant, but it does not mean that they can't still get the disease. So Green Mountain in particular still can have the defoliation, just like we saw in the last couple of pictures. But it's more tolerant than the old-fashioned English and American. And it gives you a similar look, so that's why people still plant it. We see a little bit further down, these are almost all pretty much Korean type boxwoods. We'd have a few other cultivars of English boxwoods right up here, but you can see these can be carriers of the disease. They might live through it, but they could still spread it to your other boxwoods. So it is hard to introduce new ones in your landscape. Pretty much, my most common recommendation is to folks is just don't bring new ones in your landscape. That is the best thing you can do to try to prevent the spread of this disease. And just quick circling of the English one's at the top, and the American one is a cultivar of boxwood, which you can see is also circled, the little circle. And then the green boxes here, these are the tolerant cultivars of boxwood to the disease, but they can still be carriers, just like that Saunders brother introduction we talked about a little bit ago. They might not show a lot of symptoms, but they can still spread it to your other types in your landscape. So let's bring all this up first. Okay. So a few things you can try to prevent the spread in your landscape. There are some cultivars that have more of an open habit. Pruning can also come into play with that. Don't hedge the plants. You want to keep it in a natural growth habit can help prevent this disease. You want as much air circulation as possible so that the leaves dry out. That is one of the big things we see here on this slide. Avoiding overhead irrigation, so using some kind of drip system if you need to irrigate your plants. Avoid hedges if possible. I know that's a very hard thing to do, but that can also be an interesting part of the situation that can help with combating this disease. Plant spacing comes into play. Sanitation practices. We've heard that a couple times in this presentation, but that is really important. Removing all the leaf litter that is possible. I know it's not always possible to remove leaf litter, but doing the best you can. Bagging this material, any diseased plants you do have, bagging and taking them to the landfill. Or you see, burying them 2 feet deep. So as deep as you can. Do not compost these plants. You can burn the plants, that is fine. That's what they were doing in Rappahannock County when they were having the real big problems a couple years ago, so that is fine. But just don't put it in the compost pile, like we've already said before. Don't do that. Mulching around the plants can reduce splashing water and spore dispersal, so that can help a lot. But then you have the old leaves falling on that mulch, so cleaning it up as best you can. I know it's hard to do, but the leaf debris is really where these spores are coming from. That's how it's spreading from year to year. So removing all that you can is a good way of combating this disease. So there are some fungicide options that you can buy to try to prevent this disease. So preventative applications can be applied. So you will have to repeat these applications according to the label. So most of these products, 7 to 14 day intervals. If it rains a lot, then you have to apply more often. And this would be the entire growing season. So spring, summer, through early fall is when you'd have to do this preventative measure. Some of the historic homes, I know James Madison's Montpelier is doing this on some of their boxwoods. They treat them preventatively, so they are doing the spraying. The cheapest product for homeowner use would be Daconil, which is the first product name on here. You can find that at all kinds of retail outlets. It is very common. The active ingredient is chlorothalonil. So if you want to look on the label, make sure it says that. But Daconil pretty much does. And for homeowner use, that is the big one for use. The research has shown they don't know when you can stop doing this. So you might have to do this for the life of the boxwoods for preventative spraying. That's why a lot of the other measures we are talking about can be very helpful. So you can do that instead. Just don't introduce the disease into your landscape as best you can. But if you absolutely want to spray, Daconil would be the top choice product for your use. Just remember you have to make repeated applications throughout the growing season though. So sanitation, this is very important. You mix up your selected sanitizer. So either the Lysol, household bleach, 1 part bleach to 9 parts water. That'd be the Lysol and the household bleach would be the easiest ones to find for most folks. You mix that up in a bucket or some kind of other thing like that. You have to have 5 minutes of wet contact time. So this would be your pruners, any other gardening equipment that you're going to be using. 5 minutes they have to be in that bucket. So clean the equipment of tools of any organic matter on the tools, any kind of leaf debris, any kind of soil, actually can prevent the sanitation process from happening, can prevent the bleach and the Lysol from working on the disease. But the biggest thing, use the highest label rate. That's also important. So if you're going to use Lysol, use the one that's called Lysol Concentrate Disinfectant. So it's usually in the brown bottle, as you can see in this package. So that's their higher concentrate product. 5 minutes wet contact time is the big takeaway. So you have to do that. You have to do it for at least 5 minutes. And this is any kind of equipment you have. You're sanitizing your equipment before you're using it on the boxwood. So this is shears, hedging equipment, anything like that. So let's bring up all this first. Whoops. So warm temperatures plus leaf wetness equals highest disease pressure. So late spring, One of the prime times for Boxwood Blight, and that's when we usually look out for it, is actually in fall. Fall is the time period that's split between summer and early fall. Perfect weather conditions for the disease. So really look out late spring, early fall, look out for this disease. So anytime temperatures are above 60 degrees, rain is in the forecast, you're checking your weather forecast, that is when you want to put a preventative spray on. That's when you want to put it in place. So just a little bit of recap here. Nothing much we haven't already said. Don't introduce the disease plant material into your landscape. Boxwood blight is very, very hard to eradicate. It is in our area, so you have to watch out for that. And the Boxwood Blight Task Force, that is also on the Virginia Cooperative Extension website. That is something to look at. We have all of our publications on there. Current updates are on there a lot. So that is one good place to go to. But like I said earlier, I'm going to share this presentation with y'all, copy this, the recording with y'all, so y'all have this for your information. You can spread it to all your neighbors and your family and all kinds of other folks like that. So this picture right here, this was actually from the name just slipped me. This was he was the president of the United States. What is his name? This is the Woodrow Wilson Historic Library up in Staunton, Virginia. I think I got the name right. If I did not, it is from Staunton. So we're seeing up here, they had the Boxwood Blight disease in their landscape, and they had to actually plastic wrap, trash bag, all of their boxwoods in their formal garden. So very devastating, very sad. They wrapped it in plastic and in trash bags to make sure it didn't spread to anywhere else in the landscape, and that is one of the big things you have to do. So sad situation all around, but this is just for the illustration. This is why we talked about all those preventative measures. You don't want to have to get to this point. If you do need to bring a sample into the extension office for positive identification, make sure to double bag the sample. So 2 bags, plastic bags at least, because we don't want to spread it anywhere else. So if you do need to bring a sample into the extension office, make sure to double bag the sample too. So this is just for your illustration, all this preparedness kit. You can do that, or you can't. You don't have to do it. That's for your home preparedness. But mostly this slide is for this picture because you don't want to have to get to that point, especially if you have a lot of boxwoods. That is a sad situation. So a quick snapshot of the Boxwood Blight Task Force website on the Virginia Cooperative Extension website. This is what it would look like when you pulled it up. You can search this in Google and find it pretty quick. So this is all the different information I talked about today and more. So just for your information, you can share this with anybody. It's free. So look at it to your heart's delight. So this is just talking about if you do need a diagnosis, you think you have it and you want it positively identified, collect a branch sample. You want the best sample is a sample with the tan color leaves, the diseased leaves that you suspect, and you want green healthy growth on the same sample. So that is very important to do. Double bag it, sealed bags, submit it to the office. There's no charge for this. This is sent off to the Virginia Tech Plant Clinic, and they have a pretty good turnaround time, a couple weeks. They'll let you know if you actually have boxwood blight on your bushes. And this is any Virginia Cooperative Extension office you can take this to. So if you're not in our local area, you can look up your local office, www.extension.vt.edu. And if you are in the local area, here's the Culpeper County address and information. 101 Southwest Street, Culpeper, Virginia. So we're kind of at the It's where Davis Street and West Street intersect. So the courthouse is on one side of the road. If you're coming down Davis Street, it'll be on the right-hand side. Our office is on the building directly across from the courthouse on the left-hand side of Davis and West Street. And our phone number is 540-727-3435. My personal extension is 355, and my email address is on there also. A good alternative for shady locations, and one of my favorites, leave you with a happy little picture in this presentation. This happy little camellia. So camellias grow great in Virginia in the shade, and it is an evergreen. So just a little takeaway for you. That is the end of the presentation today. If you have questions, you feel free to put them in chat. You're able to unmute yourself if you want to. So let's see if there's any questions at this time. So one of the questions is, what would tiny black spots on the boxwood leaves be a sign of? It would really depend on what you're referring to. So it could be mite damage, not leaf miner, it'd be mites. It could be the start of a fungal disease, like Boxwood Blight or maybe Volutella Blight. So tiny black dots, more than likely, if it's on the underside of the leaf, it could be spores. So it just depends on, if you do suspect something like that, just send us a picture. We'll take a look. Topside leaf, it could be, yeah, picture would be the best. It could be weather related. Yeah, picture would be best, sorry. I can't say much without a picture of it. I apologize. Any other questions while y'all are typing or something like that? Thank you very much for attending today. I know we had a small crowd, but feel free to spread the word. Like I said, I'm going to share all this information with y'all. So, any other questions? Oh, you're very much welcome. Yep. Thank you for attending, like I already said. Thank you very much. Y'all are very, very, very much welcome. Doesn't look like they're coming in quick or fast or anything, so hope y'all have a great evening to the few people that are still on. Correct. Yes, I just saw that question come up about the recording. I don't think the the closed captioning is very good. Virginia Tech is trying to work on that still, but we do have to send it off for captioning, closed captioning first. So it's usually a couple days before I can send out the recording, and I'll send it out at the same time as the PDF. You're very welcome, and I'm going to sign off now. So y'all have a great evening. Y'all have my contact information. Feel free to contact me if you have any other questions. And thanks again.